Welcome to Tea Lounge for podcast on fashion, travel, and life. Tea Lounge. Hello and welcome to the Tea Lounge podcast. My name is Fee and I'm glad to introduce you to the fourth episode. If you've always wanted to know some of the questions that immigration officers ask at either the airports or at any border points, then this is the podcast to listen to. I've had the privilege of gaining entry into different countries through the airports and at the border points, and so I've put together some of the common questions that immigration officers tend to ask as you're gaining entry into a different country. Gaining entry into a different country is a whole new challenging experience because you're not guaranteed that you will gain entry. I know for most of us, especially Africans, we always feel like it's a challenge getting your visa, but a visa doesn't guarantee you that you will gain entry into another country. Obviously, you need to go through the immigration offices and they have a couple of questions that they will ask you. There is no particular set of questions that are normally asked, and so I just put together the most common questions that could come across. And the kind of questions that you'll be asked depend on a lot of things. From the moment that you get to either that airport or the entry point, there's always cameras and there's people observing your behavior, so you might be asked a different question from the other person, and basically has to do with your behavior from the moment you got there. And so sometimes you might find different people being asked different things and someone getting offended, like, why did they ask me that? What is it that they saw in me that they felt they needed to ask me certain questions? But on the overall, these are the common questions that people get asked. The first one is, what is your name? Obviously, when you get to the immigration officer's desk, the first thing they will ask for is your passport and maybe your yellow fever card if the country that you're going to needs that card. And now with the pandemic, I'm sure they might be asking for something, a clearance to show that you're not infected with the coronavirus or something. Maybe just maybe. But the first thing that they normally ask is, what is your name? And I know you might get irritated because of jet lag or because of some other reason, like they're holding your passport, but then why are they asking you your name again? And this is just to gauge whether you're the owner of that passport. And you'll notice that as they're asking you what your name is, they'll be looking at your passport, looking at the photo, and trying to look at your face to see if you're the same person who is presenting the passport. And so just give the simple answer, your name as it is on your passport. The second one, they might ask, where are you flying from? Just tell them the country that you're coming from. If you're coming from Kenya, tell them, yes, my flight came from Kenya and now to country X, country Y, country Z. They want to know whether you're the same person that left your country and you're the one now wanting to gain entry in this particular country. And also with this question, I realize sometimes they're asking you, where are you flying from? And they keep going through your passport to see other countries that you've visited before. And sometimes you might find that they have a problem with the country where you're flying from. And this has to do with maybe the relationship between the country that you're coming from and that particular country that you are going to. If those two countries don't have a really great relationship, you might find that you might be put there for a little more time because they want to know exactly why you're coming to their country. Or maybe that's not your country of stay, but you find that in your passport you've visited other countries that might be having some problem with that country that you're visiting. So if they keep saying that you've been traveling maybe to country X that they have a problem with, they'll want to know what is it that you've been going to do in that particular country. So you just need to be careful. And it's for this reason that you find sometimes people try to avoid going to certain countries if in future they know it might compromise their chances of gaining entry or visas for a different country. So you just have to be careful, but all the same, just state the country that you're coming from. The other one is they want to know the reason why you're visiting that country. They can already tell from their system the reason why you're going into their country, but then they just want to hear it from you as the person coming in. So just tell them the reason. If you're going there for tourism purposes, if you're going there to study, if you're going there to work, and all these things need a backup. For instance, if you say you're going for tourism purposes, they might want to see whether you booked the hotel. They need to see proof If you're going for maybe visiting just a friend, they might want to know the address of the friend whom you're going to visit and such like things. Another question can be, for how long are you going to stay in this country? Just tell them the duration that you're going to stay, and obviously you know it. It's a question that they use to see whether you'll give a contrary answer. A follow-up question to this can be, what will happen once your visa expires? And this is a trap. They want to see if you give a contrary answer, that maybe say something like, oh, by that time I would have known ways of staying, or I'll try to renew my visa, or they just want to see if you are going to stick to the duration that you've been allowed to stay in that country. So always be vigilant and don't stutter. Always just have your composure. If you stutter, they might see that there's something that you're trying to hide, and they might deny you the chance to gain entry, and it will be such a waste. I mean, you've come a long way going through the visa process, booking your flights, packing your bags, and all these things, and then getting sent back home is not cool. So you just need to be vigilant. Your address is another question that they might ask. Different countries don't like people just going in and ending up on the streets or in shelters. So they want you to state the exact place where you're going to stay. If it's a hotel, they might need the proof of the booking. If it's someone's house, they'll need the actual address. You can't just say, oh, with someone, with a friend, and leave it hanging like that. They might want to know your friend's name and the exact address. Last year, I traveled with a group to Israel, and the common question that people were being asked was, are you traveling alone or you're part of the group? If you're traveling alone, then just say, yes, I'm traveling alone. Or if it's a big group and you're not related to anyone within the group, just say, yes, I'm traveling alone, but I'm part of this group. But if you find that maybe you're in that group, you're with your relative, maybe your spouse, your child, your parent, just say, yes, I'm in this group, I'm with my mom, I'm with my brother, I'm with so and so. Another very common question is, do you know anyone in this country? This question, I realize they ask this because they want to know whether there's a cartel that brings people into that country. So if you don't know anyone, most of the times people say they don't know anyone, even when they know. But if, for instance, you've gone to visit your friend, you can't say you don't know anyone. You'll obviously say you know your friend. They might ask follow-up questions like, how do you know this person? Are you related to them? Are they your spouse? Or are you dating? Are you friends? How do you know this person? The other scary question is career. And I'm saying scary because I was traveling with my boss last year, and she was really scared that I might not be let in to one of the countries that we were going to because of my career. And I thank God that I didn't know that she was scared up until when I was let in. Previously, she heard that someone was not let into that country because of that person's career, and so she was scared for me. I just thank God I didn't know that, because maybe I would have panicked. But thankfully, I wasn't even asked anything to do with my career. I was just let in. And I had the old generation passport, the Kenyan one, that has your career at the back of it. So you can't start telling them a different career, yet on your passport it's written your actual career. And so you might be asked what your career is. Just tell them your career as it is. If it's written on your passport, and even the new generation ones, they're not written clearly like the old ones. But I feel since it's digital, they have a way of knowing the career that you wrote. So just say your career as it is. And I said it's a tricky one because sometimes different countries don't want to allow certain people to come in because they feel that maybe you might be spying on them, or you might disguise yourself as a tourist, but behind your tourism activities, you'll be doing secret recording or some investigative piece. So certain careers like journalism, not to scare any journalists out there, but sometimes you might not be let into certain countries if they feel that you're coming in to do some investigation or something. But then again, it just boils down to how you present yourself and the reason why you're there. Yeah, we're almost getting to the end of it. They'll always ask you about your luggage. Are you the one who packed your bags, or did someone else pack for you? Or what's in your bag. Sometimes they won't open it, but if they see maybe your luggage is too big, or sometimes it's not even too big, but they'll just ask you generally what's in your bag or who packed your bags. And sometimes they ask that so that in any case they end up opening your bag and they find something that's illegal, maybe drugs or items that are not permitted in that country, they might take it away. You might be sent back to your country, or you might be arrested. And then finally, this was just from my own experience. They asked all the questions and they're satisfied, or they might look like they're satisfied and they'll stamp your passport. But the moment that you will enter, they might send someone to spy on you to get more information, and you might just find yourself being taken back home. From my personal experience, I entered the UK via Heathrow Airport, and I didn't have quite a smooth interaction with the immigration officer. He was very tough, and in my head I was like, oh my, why is he being so tough on me like this? But finally he let me in. I was going to a city that was 3.5 hours away. I had to take a bus from London to that city. On this bus that I took, there was someone who'd been sent to spy on me. I was traveling alone. I didn't know anyone, but there was this lady who came and sat right next to me, and she kept asking me all these questions. You look young, so how come you're traveling alone? Aren't you scared? Just so many questions to try and see if I'll give a different answer. And what made me know that she was a detective or some kind of an immigration officer was that she wrote me down her email address. I didn't ask for it. She just wrote it down and told me, here is my email address. She pretended to be someone who's also new to that country. She had just come for a totally different thing, and that thing got cancelled, and now she just needs to go back to her hotel or something like that. Funny enough, she wasn't Caucasian, and she asked me a lot of personal questions. Majorly it had to do with if I knew anyone in the UK, if I was scared, what was I going to do after 1 year. Thankfully, I had the right kind of answers, and when she felt that she was done with the questions, she decided to alight the bus. Just suddenly, she just alighted the bus, which was very strange. She reminded me not to forget to send her an email because she needs to know that I got to my destination safely. And she never replied to date. So it was proof enough. So this is just a caution. Don't be too sure, especially abroad. They always have this thing where they say, don't talk too much, because what you say is what someone will use against you, and you don't know who you're talking to. They always have that thing where don't talk too much when you're abroad. Yeah, it's just something that I learned while I was there. Like, no one really tells you don't talk much, but in your interactions with other people, you'll realize people try to limit a lot of information about themselves, about where they're coming from, about what they do. They try to limit just for their own safety. But it worked in my favor that I gave all the right answers, and honestly, I didn't have anything to hide because I knew I wasn't going to stay there illegally. But yeah, just be careful. You might be asked something, and you might be one of those people who decides that if they get a chance to go abroad, they're never coming back. And once you get that stamp and you go in and you just meet a random person and they're asking you, okay, so what will happen when your contract comes to an end or when your visa expires? And you go like, well, I'm not leaving this place, or I'll find a way of just staying illegally, or something that's not straight. You might find yourself going back home. Well, those are the most common questions that immigration officers ask, either at the border points or at the airports. And oh yeah, I forgot another one. Currently, social media is such a big thing, and people feel it's their own page, it's their own handle, and so they can write whatever thing they want. Last year, there was someone who was told to log into their social media, and they had to go through whatever he posts on his social media pages. So just be careful. You might even be told to log on to your social media sites like your Facebook, your Twitter. They might ask you, which social media do you use? And you say Facebook. At that particular point, you might not be thinking anything that you posted, and they'll go through your post, and maybe just one thing comes up that you wrote a contrary thing. Maybe you wrote something bad about that country or about certain gender or a certain group of people that they feel you'll be a threat when you go to their country, and just as simple as that, you might be sent back home, and there's nothing really you can do. You can't fight, you can't do nothing, because it's their country, and if they say you're not going in, trust me, you're not going in. So just try to be careful, even with what you write on social media. I know it's your own page and you have the right to do what you want there, but just be careful. It shouldn't put you in an awkward place answering why you wrote something like that that's maybe embarrassing or is against human rights or a certain group of people. Always just be careful. I hope this is helpful for someone, especially if you're going to travel for the first time, and sometimes not even about traveling for the first time. You might travel so many times, but you find these questions keep repeating, or you get new ones added to it. We've come to the end of the podcast. Those are the questions that I know of. If I think of any other, maybe I'll do a separate podcast on the same. But for now, I think this will do. Thanks so much for listening. I'm looking forward to your comments, likes. I appreciate that I'm getting more listeners, but I like to get more followers as well, and engagement in terms of comments. I really appreciate that. So thank you, and until next week, bye bye.